I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, just kind of to distinguish, between kind of the different, variations that we see in post millennialism, and
Yeah.
maybe the first one would be kind of as you mentioned, kind of old Princeton view that you hold, but then there's kind of the more modern, I guess you could say, theonomic Christian Reconstruction type of. At the popular level, that's I would say we could say it's growing, to today in some circles. And so, what would kind of distinguish your view from that view that we see?
Yeah. So looking to the kind of modern blossoming, everybody postmillennialism had its little heyday in recent years, and everybody was doing the hashtag postmill, and
Yeah.
it was very trendy to be postmillennial, which is always awkward because you understand with any trend there's going to be some people that don't actually understand it. We saw that with Young Restless Reformed and other movements that have kind of swept through Christianity. But in general, I would say one major thing that kind of differentiates, well, let me point this out. So one reason you see postmillennialism very popular with those who either are, statedly theonomic or Christian nationalist or any number of variants, between or outside of those views. One of the reasons is I think one of the primary distinguishing markers between postmillennialism and amillennialism, which is probably the dominant view within especially reformed circles. One of the distinguishing marks is that it expects the kingdom of God to be manifest both in on earth as it is in heaven. So many amillennial authors, and these are broad brushstrokes, but I'm just going to just throw this out here. Many amillennial authors would say, look, the kingdom of God and the expansion of it and the victory of the church and the optimism of the gospel, those things are true and real, and yet those are primarily spiritual realities. One of the authors that I dearly love, but he's quite good at sussing this out, would be Anthony Hoekema, but that you were to expect that the kingdom's expansion is a heavenly reality. Now, it may have some kind of effects down on the earth, but really you shouldn't expect those effects, and they're certainly not part of the primary view of the kingdom. The kingdom is something spiritual and heavenly. Postmillennialism, on the other hand, says no, you can't separate or bifurcate those two. Just as we are not made as physical creatures, we're made body and soul, so too the kingdom of God is expressed both in heaven and on earth. So it's not just an earthly kingdom any more than we're physical creatures alone, but it is a kingdom that is born of spiritual and earthly means or effects. So therefore, it is very easy for those who would want to see social progress, political advance, whatever those means might look like. Postmillennialism is very attractive to those views. This was the case, for example, with liberal Protestantism back in the early 1900s. A lot of people who were very social justice minded or social works minded kind of attached themselves to a postmillennial framework, not because necessarily some of the things that I've just discussed, but primarily because there was an earthly facet to it that was lacking in other views. So I think that would be one thing that sort of differentiates my view from those. There's also the inclusion of golden age postmillennialism that has become popular again. I'm not exactly, I don't have my thumb on the pulse of Christian Twitter these days very closely, so I'm not sure exactly how popular that is, but it was certainly popular with the Puritans. It was popular back in even the old Princeton crowd. And really, when you look at something of a golden age, all they were aiming at was, can we expect with this blossoming and fruition of the kingdom of Christ, can we expect that to lead to some time of peace and prosperity here in the world? If these things are in fact happening, the nations are actually being discipled as Christ commanded us to. Souls are being converted. The fruit of the gospel is being manifest. Can we expect to look around and experience a time of peace and prosperity here in this world? And some people pushed that concept quite hard and said, yes, we can, and it will actually be a literal 1,000 years, and it will be, almost without sin, although there's always going to be sin in this world until Christ comes. But they would look for a period of very pronounced victory through the church age. Others, including myself, would say, no, you can expect the fruit of the kingdom advance. And if you want to call that a golden age, I have no major quibble with that. But we're not looking for some 1,000 year yet future extensive period in which it's a near utopia. And I think it's oftentimes something that people misunderstand about the postmillennial framework. That's typically not what you're reading from those guys when they refer to that golden age.
Yeah, that's good. That's really really helpful.